All right, folks, we're continuing our Olympic coverage, and we've had some amazing things going on in the Olympics. And I'm glad to have some great guests with me. I've got Steve Rao, who is over there as a city councilman over there in Morrisville, North Carolina, but also he used to play tennis and still does play it recreationally, but he was a competitive tennis player. And then I've got Addie, who is a regular co-host with me and everything, and she is definitely over there at Duke on our volleyball team and all of that. So she is a Duke volleyball player and originally from Nigeria and may be competing. She's got really good hopes of being on our Nigerian volleyball team. So she's hoping to compete for that country in Nigeria. And then I've got my new lovely friend, Fran Harris, who has got a great drink that she is putting out there and everything, but she is also a former WNBA player and has also competed internationally. So always glad to see when Fran can join us as well. And always glad to see that great smile that Fran gives us, as well as Addie and Steve and the rest of the team. And I was actually surprised that I saw that not that the U.S. was going into the finals. I kind of expected that, but their opponent actually surprised me, because as I was mentioning on the news earlier, I did not realize that Japan had a strong presence in basketball, particularly women's basketball. So that actually surprised me. I didn't know that France, the team that they beat, had a strong presence. I knew some of the other teams that had a strong presence as well. So I guess as we get into more and more of these things, and I know that Fran can only give me a few minutes and everything, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the WNBA and also about the Olympics and how the basketball has been going. It looks like the men are cruising on, but every once in a while it looks like they get worried maybe in the first half, because I know Australia pushed them, but then they wake up in the second half and then it's not that much of a close game and all of that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as to how we're doing with women's basketball in general, because you have had the pleasure of competing internationally. I couldn't remember if you were on one of the Olympic squads or not, but I do know that you've had the pleasure of competing internationally.
Well, first I want to say shout out to the WNBA and the W for making it to 25 years. I think people really understate how critical that is, how important it is that a business in women's sports lasted for 25 years. That's no small feat. And so I want to shout out to the women who made that happen, to all the commissioners and the presidents who made that happen. 25 years, congratulations. Yes, I was an alternate on the 88 Olympic team for Seoul. And so you had to bring that up. It's still a sore point for me that I didn't get to go to Seoul. But it's an honor to have played on so many USA national teams. So my heart always goes out to the athletes who make it and the athletes who don't make the Olympic team in Olympic years. But yeah, I'm pleased with how our women's team is doing. They looked a little iffy there for a while. I wasn't sure how strong they were going to be, but I think what Coach Dawn Staley has done is kind of found her rhythm in terms of her rotation, and now they're starting to play some of their best basketball. And you do want that. You are going to be a little iffy at the beginning of the games because you haven't played with these people in ever. For some of them, they've never played together. You're trying to figure out the chemistry. You're trying to figure out the rotation. So it's going to look a little not quite like USA basketball, but I think we hit our stride. And she's got her 8-9 folks who are really doing well. And I think we're going to finish with the goal. That's the way we planned it. That's the blueprint. And I believe that's what's going to happen. But to your point about Japan, listen, I've been playing basketball for a long time. Even back in the early 90s, we could never catch the Chinese, the Japanese on those picks. I'm just telling you, the way they play basketball is so different than the way we play it, because we rely a lot on our athletic ability to be able to jump over you, run faster, more athletic feats. They rely a lot on movement and picks and recovers and that kind of stuff. So it's been really fun to see us try to stay with the Japanese and the Chinese, because they've really perfected that style of the game. Very pleased with where we are right now. So I'm happy to see us play for the gold, and I believe we're going to get our 7th consecutive.
I hope that we do get that gold and everything. I'd love to hear from Addie as well about the perspective of volleyball, because I do know that the AA ladies did win the beach volleyball gold and all of that. And before you get out of here, and I don't know how many times you can give me, I know originally you said about 10 minutes. Before you get out of here, Fran, I did want the folks to know about that energy drink that you've got, because I can't have you ever come out here without telling folks about it, because it is part of what you're doing now, in addition to even creating some sports complexes over there in Texas. So I'd love for folks to know about that as well.
So in January, I launched Electra, which is a sports drink. It's not an energy drink. It's a sports drink. It's a better for you, healthy, functional sports drink. I don't think a lot of people know that I am the first solo Black founder of a sports drink, of a national sports drink brand, which, given how much our culture drinks sports drinks, is kind of shocking to me. First sports drink founder who's a Black, first sports drink solo founder who's a Black woman. So I'm very proud of that and very excited to be paving a different road in the sports industry. We launched us as in January on Shark Tank. Phenomenal experience for me. We're doing really well. We're in Texas now. We sell online, direct to consumer, about to launch on Amazon. And if you're in Texas, you can get it at one of our 172 HEBs that we're distributed in. So very excited about that. Lots of fun things happening there. And, I'll never miss the opportunity to say, if you're interested in partnering, talking about partnerships with Electra, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Fran Harris.
Sounds good. And what about the sports complex? Because I do know you were looking at doing sports complexes as well.
Yeah, so we open our first. We're scheduled to open our first sports complex in this time next year, so 2022, in a little town called Sunnyvale, which is near about 15 minutes from Dallas. And I think it's about we've got like 10 baseball fields, 8 basketball courts, 4 basketball courts, 16 volleyball courts. I mean, it's an amazing boutique style facility in Dallas. That's our first one. And we have 2 others that are coming in 23 and 24. Again, if you're interested in partnering and understanding how you can bring your folks to our facilities, definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. So excited about a real estate development company as well.
Sounds great. Sounds like y'all are doing some amazing things. I know that earlier today we had on the World Edition show we do, which is more of a news-oriented show, we had the former mayor of Morrisville, and they've actually put in a cricket professional team over there as well. So they have actually got a cricket professional team going in that area. So that's another sport that is going on. So who knows? Maybe you can put a cricket field over there in one of your sports complexes and all of that. Eddie, what is your thoughts about the beach volleyball and things of that nature? Because like I said, I did watch the second part of that game. I was really glad to see it. I'm glad to see the dedication that one of the ladies, I believe it was Miss Ross, gave to her mother who had recently passed and all of that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. And who knows, maybe you can even represent with the drink and everything, the sports drink. Maybe you can represent Fran's brand as you're doing the great things over there in Duke University and eventually on the international plane as well.
I mean, it's an honor to meet you, Ms. Fran, and it's so amazing on what you're doing. And I mean, NIL just released all athletes' name, image, and likeness, so maybe we will be in touch. But going back to beach volleyball, yeah, it was an amazing game between April Ross and Alex Kleiman as they faced against Australia. It was also, I was talking to a lot of my teammates, especially earlier this morning in practice. It was also kind of sad. The Australian team lost the game in a missed serve into the net. And so they basically blew out the Australian team. And when you're in the gold medal match, you want to have that tough game. You want to see them fighting for it. But I mean, April Ross and Alex Kleiman, they were just amazing. I know. It was amazing energy, amazing connection, and they were just pounding into the sand. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's been a great Olympics. It's so great to see Fran and Adi here, and I think that I look forward to. We have one interesting story. A Morrisville resident from North Carolina. He's in the semifinals of the diving, Jordan Wendell. So his father, he resigned from the city council, moved to California to help with Jordan with his training, and so that's exciting. He's an orphan from Cambodia, whom his father, who is an openly gay veteran of this country, was in the United States Navy. He adopted Jordan as an infant, and Jordan had all kinds of health problems, and now they're chasing the Olympic dream. It's just so amazing, and to see that. And so I just love watching all these different sports, and of course the mental health. People worried about Osaka, now Simone Biles, and now there's rumors that Djokovic is having some bouts with mental. All of a sudden, there's rumors on the street that the pressure is starting to get to him. It was looking good there after he won Wimbledon, that he was on his way to win the Olympics and win the U.S. Open. And now all of a sudden, I think so that when you start calling people the greatest of all time and winning the record, all of a sudden it's, so now Novak, they say, is hired another therapist and he's trying to get himself ready. But that loss to Zverev really, I think, affected him mentally. Now he's going into the U.S. Open, sort of like, can I do it? Can something go wrong? And people started worrying because he was throwing rackets and cursing at himself, and he looked like the Novak of like a year ago.
Yeah, no
You
doubt
know?
about that. Hey,
Yeah.
Fran, that actually raises an interesting question.
Yeah.
We've actually talked about that a couple of times here on the Olympic coverage and everything. But what is your thoughts about athletes using these platforms to talk about issues that they've got on their mind, the activism of some athletes? I know that there was one track athlete, I believe it was, that was coming out giving the Black Power salute. And of course, there's been some questions around the soul cap and things of that nature, where they would wanted to do a certain kind of cap in order to protect our kind of hair if they were swimming and things of that nature. So we have seen politics enter even into this Olympics, and we know what's going on with the Bulgarian athlete as well. But I'd love to hear, as a former international player, your thoughts on the role of being an athlete and an activist.
Well, interestingly enough, I had the opportunity to get inducted into a Hall of Fame with Juan Carlos, who was the original for me. Those guys in Mexico City. We were inducted into a Hall of Fame, many years together, and I had the opportunity to talk to him about that and how difficult it was to do that, the aftermath of that. I can only imagine what these athletes are feeling with the opportunity that they have social media. They've got a built-in platform, which I actually love. I'm glad to see people get the opportunity to have a microphone to stand up for what they believe in. So I've loved all of the social justice stuff. Things are as they should be. I don't care what that is. The people who are for it, the people who are not for it. It's the kind of conversation. That we should be having. Sorry about that. My brother's calling me. Always. And then I also love the conversation we're having about mental health. Right. Because that's a conversation that wasn't happening 20 years ago. It was happening in the back rooms and under the table and in the training room at the universities, but nobody was talking about it the way they are talking about it now. And I love that men are coming forward and talking about their struggles, because we don't necessarily always give men the space to be human. And we certainly don't give athletes the space to be human, men or women. But I love what I'm seeing in those conversations. I hope they continue. I know they'll continue to happen. And I think people who are really against, I saw someone say Simone Biles quit on her team. And clearly you've never played, basketball. You've never done anything at the highest level. And I said, my response to that in that interview was, put your oxygen mask on first. You do your team a disservice when you are not taking care of yourself. So if I go out there and I got all this stuff going on. Simone Biles said felt like she was lost in the air. So what do you want to do? Fall on her head and then just take one for the team? Like, those kinds of conversations are necessary, but I think people need to think about what they're saying when they're saying, these athletes are quitting on their teams. Yeah, there are some things you need to quit. There's sometimes it's the right decision.
Yeah, exactly. And even being, it's funny that I wasn't a top professional athlete like Fran, but being a former college tennis player, I lost a mentor today in West Virginia in the tennis industry. He's the guy that got me into tennis, and he built a lot of tennis clubs. He had a great relationship with Nick Bollettieri, did with Bill Weimer, and many, many nationally ranked tennis players were all coming together to honor him, because we all came out of West Virginia. Even the great Ann White, who played at Wimbledon, is from Charleston, West Virginia. And there's a connection there with the Weimer family. But I never thought I would get into politics, but I think even politicians need mental support and coaching. It's a very, very tough business, the kind of bashing that you take. What I don't like about it compared to sports is when I was on a tennis court, I could control a forehand or a backhand and work on my fitness. And I couldn't control someone cheating, but I could control what I wanted to do. And the hardest thing about politics is the lack of control, the lies that can occur on Twitter and social media, the demeaning nature, which, even though I'm 50, when you go to bed at night, you get an anonymous letter in the mail that says, I want to, shoot you. I want to kill you. I hate you. You're awful. And they don't even sign it. They just send these anonymous emails. It's very, very troubling. And,
it's some troubling times that we're in, no doubt about that. But
and this is happening to elected officials at the local and state level.
Right.
And I can't even imagine what the people at the national level are going to. And, I was just finishing Barack Obama's book, Promised Land. And, they were finally, Michelle Obama had given the blessing I'm going to let you run, Barack, for president. But David Axelrod and David Plouffe, who are his advisors, said, do you really, really want to do this? Because this is really the gutter politics. This is really, really going to, it's not about the ideas. It's not about the thing. And he finally made it through. But, you look at Obama, after 8 years of the presidency, how he aged and how beat up he was, right?
No,
Uh,
but you're so right. And even recently, when we had another, and I hate to bring up Seoul again, but it was somebody that did make it to Seoul and everything. But we had Michelle Cameron Coulter on, and she was talking about the fact that what she went through when she was competing, and she was what we now call artistic swimming. At that time, it was called synchronized swimming, and she was a gold medalist in that sport. And she mentioned the fact that she actually had gone through an eating disorder, but she was not even dealing with that until after the fact. She actually went through the treatment for that after the fact and everything, because sports psychology, as she put it, wasn't as big of a deal. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And also, if you think, Addie, if there's enough sports psychology. So I'd love to hear from Fran first, but because I know Michelle brought up the fact of sports psychology and the fact that we don't have in the past, we didn't have enough of that. So it's great that we're seeing sports psychology taking place now.
Yeah, I'm glad it's popularized. I'm glad it's the it thing to do, because everybody needs a great therapist on their team for sure. And I was listening to Steve talk about the letters he gets. Think about a 17-year-old getting that when they get to college. I mean, these people are vicious, and that kind of stuff may be happening at the high level of politics, but it's happening. The high school students,
bullying. It's just terrible.
Absolutely. So I think sports psychology is absolutely amazing. One of the best things I did for myself, not realizing how great it was. The year before I went to Texas, my mother died. She died the year before my senior year in high school. And I had a very hard time transitioning. Just my mother died, like literally college, sports, Texas, away from home. But then you add on top of that a 17-year-old girl going off to college without her mother. And I've got a therapist. Like, I don't know how I knew to do that, but I was like, I got to talk to somebody, because the thoughts that I'm having, the depression that I'm feeling, the inability to concentrate, all of that is related. And just think about the number of student athletes who don't and who won't go see a therapist. They won't see a psychologist for all the taboo, all the reasons in their culture or whatever that they won't do it. And the things so you bring all of that to your team, you bring all of that to your academics, and it creates a really
so uncertain.
Yeah, bubble.
And in the sense of community, and that's what I loved about growing up in West Virginia. Why athletics, the club was a place where we would do our homework before our matches. We would get in a van on a Friday with the Weimer family, and we would travel to a tennis tournament. And if we were good at one of our matches, we'd go to Chuck E. Cheese and eat pizza, and then drive back to Charleston. We'd go to Columbus. We'd go to Cincinnati. But it was a way of working with each other, right? And I gained a lot of weight when I was 14, and I was eating too much. And the funny thing is, Mr. Weimer was so hard on us. And I was telling this joke today to a player that my mom would bring in like really greasy Indian food, like, to eat at the club for lunch. And Mr. Weimer would grab my lunch, and I'd say, "What are you doing?" He goes, "You can't eat that. You've gained too much weight. You're not going to be eating like that when you're training." And he would eat my lunch and get me a salad, and I'd start crying. And he'd say, "Don't cry. Mommy's not coming to help you. You got to fight." And so he was that kind of, but in a good way, he was bullying, right? Because he cared. He cared, right? And so I would be like, "What are you doing with my food?" And he goes, "No, your mom shouldn't be making you. I'm going to talk to your mom next week about not eating."
That was tremendous. Everything, Addie. What's your thoughts? Because definitely you're on the Duke team. You're part of the Duke volleyball team. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the importance of psychology as y'all are even going through what y'all are having on that collegiate level even now.
Exactly. It is very important. And it's actually a coincidence. We had a meeting with our new team, including all of our freshmen, with our 3 sports psychologists assigned to our team of this year. And a big thing that they were talking about, and a big problem in athletics that Miss Fran already pointed to, was athletes have this mentality that I'm strong, I'm okay, I'm going to push through it. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to go to the next set. I'm going to go to the next game. I'm fine. Yeah. And that I'm fine mentality is what is bringing a lot of athletes down, and what puts them in this cycle of chaos and destruction, self-destruction in their own minds. And so I'm an open advocate. My roommate, who is on the Duke lacrosse team, she's an open advocate for therapy. We are both in therapy. We try to tell our freshmen, like, if they need anything, they want anything, come to us, because as a collegiate athlete, as a collegiate athlete at my school especially, there's so many pressures that people do not see. And talk to somebody, regardless of how strong you think you are. The strongest people ask for help, and I'm so glad to be at like such an institution and at a time where this is not as stigmatized as before. And I mean, me and my roommate, we started this organization called Morgan's Message for our friend who unfortunately passed away from suicide due to not enough mental health um, programs in place. She was on the Duke women's lacrosse team, and we don't want anyone else to be in her position and not feel like they're alone. So we are very big on mental health, and we're just trying to make tomorrow better than it was yesterday.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Fran, you actually alluded to it, but I know Addie has brought it up as well a couple of times. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts about the aspect of social media, because we know that the athletes are also paying a lot of attention to social media, but sometimes that can also be a double-edged sword, because sometimes you get caught up in that like mentality where you always want to get the approval from social media. And as y'all have all pointed out, sometimes social media isn't as approving. Sometimes they can be very harsh and even rude in some of their remarks that they make. So I'm just wondering, and I guess I'll start with you, Addie, but I'd love to hear from Fran too, about the impact that they've seen of social media. Because I'm sure even with your drink that you're seeing some of the athletes that are working with you that might have had to face the consequences of social media.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, social media oh my bad. Social media is a double-edged sword. Like, it is such a great platform to get information out quickly, to get information out to the masses. But make one wrong move, somebody's got you. Say something wrong, everyone knows. And it's just, and then we have places, the Olympic committees taking a stance against, like, from athletes posting anything political or anything controversial on their social media, is they're probably going to face a fine. And so, like you said, many of these athletes are posting on like TikTok, Instagram, fun things like interacting with the other countries, but it's also highlighting the problems with the Olympics. Like, for example, the heat, the pandemic, the clusters that we're seeing in some of the teams. So it's very interesting to see.
Yeah, for me, it's a tool. It's a business tool. I'm not that, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I do most of my content on LinkedIn because those are my people. That's where I do a lot of my business. I have all the other accounts, but I really am not very consistent. I'm more consistent probably with Electra because it is a business. So I know who I am, but I'm not 17. I know who I am. I'm not caught up in that or whatever. When people are mean and whatever, we have a security team in place. Like, we know how to handle that. We screenshot stuff. It's a business for me. When I see crazy stuff on what people are saying to me, I'm like, okay, let's screenshot that, send it to our security team. We know what we're going to do with that. A 17-year-old, a 22-year-old, gets caught up in that. I've had many conversations because I have a company called Athletes Who Mean Business, and we teach athletes how to mean business. And so I have conversations with pro athletes, and they're like, this person posted this and this person, and they're like genuinely upset, and just their day is shot about somebody who said something about their game or told them they shouldn't be. And it's weird. It's really strange to me that they are that invested in what somebody and so on. So,
welcome to my world. I know. Yeah, exactly. And in the game, I use social media to share my messages as a politician, right? And
what's happening?
Hey, Fran, I don't know what happened.
We get back Mr. Steve. I mean, I like to point out Miss Fran's point about how we get comments, even as Duke volleyball players on our Instagram, people saying, wow, you guys suck. You've lost 3 games in a row. Get a new coach. And we're like, who are you? Like, this random person posting on our, commenting on our social media. And I mean, as the maturity level grows, as you become older through this game of sports, you realize you're like, these people are on the sidelines. They're just people talking, all bark, no bite. If they're actually going to do something, we would see
no doubt about it. I want to bring in another gentleman who's had some experience with sports as well, that being Carl Darden. He's actually had some experience with sports that you talked about, Fran, being in a sport that folks are not all that familiar with, but he is part of Navy sports, which means that he gets to learn a lot about like rowing and canoeing and sports that we don't really have that much to do normally with and everything. But he has definitely been involved with that and learned a lot about sports that the African American community isn't oftentimes involved in. And actually, it seems like we've done well. I mentioned yesterday the young lady from California that won the initial rowing competition or canoeing competition that we had. So definitely she won, and it was great seeing her in there and all of that. So it was just truly amazing having her win that initial race. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about some of the sports that we oftentimes don't hear about, like canoeing and things of that nature here in definitely North America. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about your involvement, one as a Navy man, because that's what pulled you into like the regattas and some of the other kind of races, and just your thoughts about how we're getting involved in there. Because I was really impressed with the young teenager. I believe her name is Nevin Harrison, if I'm remembering correctly, that won the canoe race and everything.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Mark?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've only become a big fan of rowing in about the last, I would say, 2 years or so. I was always aware of it. And by the way, you know, where I went to school at Navy, we had the whole run of varsity sports, from football, you know, basketball, all the ones that you see at any Division I school. And I, you know, when I started kind of following rowing, I'd always used to see these guys and the women as well, because we had both a men's and women's rowing team. They would be out there in the most crazy conditions out there on the water, because the academy is right there on the Severn River. So that's where they did all their workouts. And it just seemed like they never went on any kind of fall or spring breaks or anything like that. Every time you turn around, you see them out there on the water, just working their tails off. And they are one of the elite programs in the country, no doubt. And in fact, one of our young women who just graduated in May, her name was Alexandria Valencia Martinson. Mark, if you remember, I showed you that video the last time I was on. She was one of the crew members of that mixed crew of 8 that won that big race in England. Well, she qualified for the under 23 women's rowing team, the U.S. national team, and ended up making 2 crews. One was a crew of 4, and the other one was a crew of 8. And they went and competed in the under 23 World Championships in the Czech Republic about a month ago. And she came away with a gold in the 8 crew, and then a silver in the crew of 4. So just a world-class athlete by all measurement. And it's really kind of neat to see that kind of success come from somebody who, you know, went to a school like mine, because, you know, you typically will not see that sort of thing. You know, most of the time, those sports, you don't really hear too much about them. Certainly in the Olympics years, you do. And one of the reasons I started my blog and my sports and my podcast, was to be able to make sure that in my own little world, that spotlight gets shined on them, because they deserve all the credit they get.
No doubt about that. They definitely deserve a lot of credit and everything. One of the things, and I'd love to hear from all of y'all about this, there are certain sports that we have historically done well in, and I'm still trying to get Ray Leonard, who is Sugar Ray Leonard's son, to come in and talk to us at some point or another in the next day or two as we are doing our Olympic coverage. But the boxing, and you know, historically we were a strong powerhouse in boxing, but it's been, I think, since 2004 that we last won anything. So it's been 17 years since Andre Ward became the last American male boxer to win an Olympic gold medal. And since then, the United States has earned just 3 men's medals: Deontay Wilder's bronze in 2008, and Shakur Stevenson's silver, and Nico Hernandez bronze at the 2016 game. Now, it does seem like we have some shots at getting some gold, and I believe there is a gentleman that has now gotten a silver now as well that can be added to that collection. But it does seem like it's distant other memories of those teams of the past that included Sugar Ray Leonard and Leon and Michael Spinks, and teams that won, you know, that team won 5 golds, a silver, and a bronze way back in 76. And the 1984 team was seen by some as the greatest ever, and they had 9 golds, a silver, and a bronze. So I was just wondering, all of y'all's thoughts about some of these sports that we used to be dominant in that we don't seem as dominant in. We've even seemed to have fallen off to some degree, possibly in track. But I was just wondering some of your thoughts about some of these sports that we seem to be falling off on as definitely it's a global community. But I was just wondering y'all's thoughts about us falling off as the United States in certain sports. And I bring up boxing as an example.
Well, I'm back, Mark. Sorry, I lost you. Tell Fran I said bye. The lighting's not so good, but I'm low on battery on my computer, so I hope I can connect with her soon. But speaking from the tennis perspective, I think part of the problem is just speaking from the sport of tennis. I think that what's happened is if you grow up in the junior ranks in tennis, unlike the great players like Serena and Venus are sort of an exception, and you've got some up and coming Americans, but like Coco Gauff and others. But you don't have that kind of international exposure. So when you look at Nadal and Djokovic and Federer, they were training, they were like so close to each other. At least, they could travel across into Europe and play each other. So there was much more of an international exposure. Whereas here, it's pretty much just Southern United States, Eastern, and so you're not getting that international exposure. So that's why we're falling behind in some of these international sports. Whereas I think these European countries, they're competing more internationally at a younger age. So that, at least from tennis, that's one perspective. And in the college game, a lot of international players are coming in. I can't remember of a collegiate player. You go to UNC Chapel Hill, there's only one player on the whole team that was born and brought up in the United States and played junior tennis in the United States. Every other player. Now, Ade probably feels the same way in volleyball. It's probably the same in all the sports. So these international students are coming in, and they're taking away the opportunity. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm not sure so much for boxing. But
what are your thoughts, Carl? Like I said, I know the Navy in the past and some of the other military institutions have been where some of the boxers have come out of, as well as some of the wrestlers, and we have seemed to be doing strong in wrestling. But I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about some of these sports that may have fallen off in popularity or not doing as well as they had done historically.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. And Steve, I totally on board with your explanation as it relates to tennis. I think that makes total sense. When I look at something like boxing, okay, and to your point, Mark, the first Olympics I ever watched was 1972, and I believe we had a kid named Ray Seals win a gold medal in that Olympics. But then, to your point, in '76, you had that nice run with the Spinks brothers, Sugar Ray Leonard, Leo Randolph, and a couple others. And I think what has happened there is a combination of a couple of things. Number one, you see countries like the U.S. that are on top in sports like boxing and in track and certain events in track and field for so long. And that's a motivator. Let's face it. I mean, you got other countries wanting to kind of knock you off your perch if they can. And that basically, as encourages the development of sports within those countries. I mean, I think probably, basketball is the best example. I mean, back in the day, you could basically just pencil in the U.S. for a gold medal regardless. I mean, I'm not even counting the 72 Olympics. We all know that was a ripoff, but certainly, in all those other games, even when you had college amateurs playing, they were, I always believed, at least up through, I would say, even if we looked at, up through 1988, they won the bronze in '88, right? But I believe the main reason for that is because they didn't have enough time to practice together. I think that every other team, you had collegians beating basically professionals who had been playing together for years. And when they lost that gold medal in '88 and they decided to allow the professionals in '92, I said, okay, yeah, here's where we basically, let everybody know who's boss. And it was that Olympics that, of course, just launched this, just wave of terrific international players that continue to come into the United States to play in the NBA. And I think it's great, number one. I think it does make the Olympics even more exciting. Now, jumping over to track, certainly there are going to be there are specific events where the U.S. dominated, but I think the same mindset applies. You want to be able to take on the best, and to do that, you got to train your butt off to be the best. So yeah, you're going to have, I think this is more of a peaks and valleys sort of thing, as opposed to just a drop off the cliff, right? I mean, historically, the U.S. men's team has always had issues with the 4x100 meter relay. They're either great or they don't qualify for the final, unfortunately. And that was a bummer for me because that's one of the most exciting races in the Olympics, I think. But, I can live with them not winning every so often. A lot of people don't really pay too much attention to the World Championships, and typically the team will bounce back there and run well. It's not the Olympics, although you got basically the same athletes competing, I guess. It's just not as much of the world as watching. But I know and I recognize that it's happening. The other way you can look at it is there's sports that historically we have not done well and we are doing well in. Okay. You mentioned it was some of the field events, we'll say. I mean, there used to be where the Americans didn't really do super well in all the field events. I mean, you'd have some flashes there with the men's discus and so forth, but you had some success there in the women's pole vault, women's shot put, all that kind of stuff. So I believe that it's more of a peaks and valleys sort of thing, and it's just a matter of our internal programs being strong enough to attract those athletes and recruit those athletes at the grassroots level and just develop them all the way up.
20.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The other thing that we're seeing teams that have suffered the long droughts that have ended their droughts and everything. Because I know that definitely there's been a real push to try to get some more goals out of India, which is definitely a very populous country and everything. And definitely, I think it's like the second most populous country in the world, if I'm remembering
in the world,
correctly.
Yeah.
But definitely they have had a serious lack of success in terms of having goals and all of that, or even medals in general. But now that they are putting more money into their sports program, and of course they might have had some issues with corruption, but I mean that can be an issue in various countries, even in our country here as well. But they did claim their claim bronze in its first Olympics medal in the sport in 41 years when they got that bronze in field hockey. So we are seeing them actually improving in some things that they are actually, they probably have a strong field hockey team and a strong field hockey team that just hasn't had much success over decades, but now they've got a bronze and hopefully they can work on that bronze and everything and improve, because it looks like Belgium beat Australia for the actual gold medal. And then we've even seen countries that have gotten their first ever medal. I know that the Qatar has got a couple of medals. They didn't get just one. I think the Philippines has gotten at least one. And recently, Burkina Faso got its first ever gold medal, a bronze for Hugues Fabrice Zengo in the men's triple jump. So definitely, and we're also seeing youth participating, and a lot of the youth are doing well as well. Because I know that Quan Hongchan, a 14-year-old from China, scored 2 perfect 10s and was awarded a gold medal in women's 10-meter platform diving. So, Addie, I was just wondering your thoughts about some of these other countries getting their moment in the sun, but also this youth explosion that we're seeing as well. Because a lot of these young people are even younger than you are, and they are doing quite well. I know that there was some tremendous young folks that did well in the BMX biking and were definitely doing some stunts that I'm not definitely going to be trying to do at the age of 59, but maybe some other folks that are here in their 50s might want to try. But when I watch them going like, not going to attempt that.
Well, I mean, it's amazing to see. I mean, there's so many. I mean, this Olympics is really trying to push its platform towards younger audiences with the introductions of new sports like BMX, like skateboarding, like surfing, things that will grab young people's attention and do because there are young people competing in it and winning the gold against sometimes 20 to 40-year-olds, especially in skateboarding. And it's amazing to see. You said that China won. She got the 2 perfect 10s in diving as a 14-year-old. We also see many youngsters competing in artistic gymnastics. And so it's amazing to see such young people master the sport at such a young age. And to your other point about maybe not as notable countries winning, of course, I have to bring up my home country of Nigeria. I mean, we're doing okay. We're still in there. We're still in the mix, but we're not as notable when it comes to winning golds. Like right now, I think China, US, and Japan are in the top, but we did win silver and a bronze in wrestling and in track and field. And so smaller countries that don't really have a dent in the Olympics still are there and are representing their countries, and it's great to see.
Yeah, it's definitely great to see. I definitely agree with that and everything. I'd love to hear from all of you what you're looking for this weekend in terms of events that you might have been looking forward to as we get ready to go into the last couple of days in the Olympics, and also what events have really resonated with you. Like I said, I've learned some sports that I remember, but I definitely did not know how intense they were. Like I've become a fan of water polo. I was always somewhat of a fan of beach volleyball, and of course the women's basketball, which I mentioned earlier. But there are other sports, and I've always been, because I tried to run track way back in my high school days, even though I was not a master of track at all. I was probably like the Charlie Brown of my track team, but it was still fun to compete in all of that. So I've always had an affinity for watching track races and things along those lines. And by the way, just a little small fact that I did not know until Wynn brought it up, but 1995 was the year that the dancing inflatable man was invented for the Atlanta Olympics and the opening ceremony the following year. And now you can see those inflatables all over the place because they seem to be part of our sales drives of a lot of places, whether that's a car store or a number of other places. But apparently it didn't really come around till 1995, but it seems to be resonating. I don't know where it is over there in the West Coast where you are, Carl, but it seems like I see those dancing inflatable people all over the place in front of car stores and maybe rental facilities and other kinds of places as well. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts about what you're looking forward to and what has resonated with you so far in the Olympics.
Okay, for me, I think basketball. Obviously, I always that's probably the one spectator sport that I watch the most. But the other one, and it's usually held on the second to the last day, is the men's marathon. I think that that is probably one of the more dramatic races if you have a really strong field, and typically it's not one that the U.S. does well in necessarily, but more on the men's side. On the women's side, they've had some gold medal. They've had some medal contenders there the last couple of Olympics. So, unfortunately, I don't remember specific names or anything like that. But I will be watching that. I'm a kind of a recreational runner myself. I don't do those distances anymore. But the thing that's always funny is to watch both the men and the women compete. The winning time is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 2 hours, 10 minutes or so. Your world records are closer to, 2:02 or so for the men, and probably about maybe 2:15 or so for the women, maybe a little bit less depending on the track or the course. But I always joke around and said, man, they are literally running twice as fast as me because I ran a marathon. My best marathon finish was like 3:55. And like I said, the world record for the men is like, almost less than 2 hours. So those are the events that I'll be watching, the basketball and the marathon.
Yeah, it's incredible and everything. I did want to hear what Steve had to say and Addie as well. But Wynn, who is helping us direct these Olympic coverages, had actually brought up a couple of facts about the marathon and the pentathlon. One of them was that he says that 14 was the number of participants who competed in that first Olympic marathon way back in 1904, and that was 44% of the total entrants, the lowest of all time. So definitely you think about the amount of people we see competing in some of these events now, and they were running around with like only 14 folks and all of that. And he also mentioned that the modern pentathlon, which started yesterday on Thursday and goes through Saturday, but as one of the things he mentioned was that if you're a fair weather fan of the Olympics, you probably have to remind yourself what the modern pentathlon is all about and how it comes every 4 years. But, it's 5 events that include epi fencing, freestyle swimming, equestrian show jumping, pistol shooting, and cross-country running. That's a whole lot of very interesting sports. And apparently they were the set of skills that any Greek soldier would need. And today the sport is one of the most financially prohibitive. And as he points out, probably part of that is due to the fact of the amount of equipment involved. And also you have to realize that one of those pieces of equipment is relatively expensive because a horse is not cheap.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, I got to run, but I love to run now. I've been running. The funny thing is I turned 51 and I ran my last half marathon in a faster time. It used to take me 2 hours and I ran my last one in an hour and 40 minutes. So, but after seeing my mother go through knee surgery, I don't know if I want to keep running. So I'm going to have to slowly slow down because my lungs feel great, but I'm afraid about the knees. So I'm going to have to start biking, and I'm swimming as well. But I love watching the marathon running, and I'm just looking forward to a good closing ceremony. I want to see the gold medal match for soccer. see what happens tonight with U.S. men's basketball. And I signed up for the free trial of Hulu because I was getting frustrated with the NBC coverage, which was good coverage. But now I'm going to be watching a little table tennis. Go back and watch some badminton. It was amazing. But it's it's been great to be here today with you guys, and hopefully we'll have you both back on our World Edition show. And I'm going to hang around till the end, but I want to see the jet take off again to Tokyo.
All right. Appreciate it and everything. Addie, what about yourself? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to, and what are some of the things that have resonated with you so far and everything?
I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to the volleyball match. I mean, tomorrow we have the bronze medal match between South Korea and Serbia, which would be amazing to watch. But on Sunday, we have the gold medal match between Brazil and the United States. Brazil, top contender when it comes to international volleyball, but the United States, they're pulling it through. And hopefully I think it's been about 4 Olympics until we've even participated in the gold medal match. And so I'm very excited to watch that. Obviously, the basketball with the men's tournament happening today at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time between France and the United States for that gold medal match. So that would be awesome. There's also golf happening this evening, the women's marathon, which Mr. Carl already said we're fine. we get a lot of golds, and I'm excited to see if we'll get another gold in that. Diving with the prospect from Morrisville, Jay Wendell, happening also tonight. And so, yeah, artistic swimming, synchronized swimming, gymnastics with the group all around, and are just things that I will be watching as well, but especially volleyball.
Sounds good. How are we going to be doing in the men's volleyball? I know you mentioned what the women are doing. Do the men have a shot at a gold as well?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, they got bounced.
Booted a long time ago in the preliminaries.
Yeah.
But happening tomorrow in the bronze medal match, there is Argentina versus Brazil at 12:30 a.m. Eastern time, and the gold medal match between France and Russian Olympic Committee. And I will be rooting for France because I have a few friends on the men's French Olympic team, so I will be rooting for them. So bon chance, France. And this will happen at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Sounds great. Sounds like some amazing competitions that are coming our way and everything. So that is truly amazing. If you don't have it, I think I have pulled them up and everything. But Addie, if you do have them, what are the medal counts? And can we catch China? Because I know we're still behind in the gold medal count. We have passed them. We're doing really well in the overall count. I want to know whether we can catch them in the gold medal count.
We are still behind. China is leading 36 gold medals, 26 silver, and 17 bronze medals, making a total of 79 medals in total. And those come into sports like weightlifting, where they have 7 golds, diving, where they have 6, brought along by that 14-year-old, and table tennis, where they have 4. I mean, the U.S., like we said, has more medals in total with 31 golds, 36 silvers, and 31 bronzes, with a total of 98 medals in total. But we have less gold medals than China, which is why we are second place in the medal count. But most of those medals come from swimming, track and field, and shooting. Where swimming, we have 11 gold medals. And third is our host country, Japan, with 24 golds, 11 silvers, and 16 bronzes, with a total of 51 medals. And they come in sports like judo, and which is a native sport of Japan, where they have 9 gold medals, skateboarding, a new addition, and wrestling as well. And then coming in 4th and 5th place is Great Britain, actually, which shot up in the ranks, and Russian Olympic Committee coming in 5th place for the medal tally.
So it looks like we still have some work to do. Maybe some of those boxers can go ahead and get some more, at least get a gold medal, or get maybe, I think they still have a shot at least at 1 gold medal still in the competition, even though I believe one of them has already fallen to that silver category. But hopefully we can have some shots in boxing, and we still have some shots in track, and some shots in some of the team sports that we've alluded to, like the women's basketball and the men's basketball. So we've only got to get about 5 or 6 more than they do as they continue to get goals as well. So, Carl, what are your predictions? Do you think that we can pass them in the gold medal count, or are we just going to have to be happy with being the overall leader? Because I don't think they're going to catch us in overall, but I'm wondering what your speculation is as to whether we can catch them and get these 5 goals that we need as of now to tie them, and 6 to pass them.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to catch the United States in the overall count. I mean, they're 21 ahead right there. And I got to take a look at the sports that are left. And I'm a pretty systematic guy. So you look at the sports that are left, you see if there's any Chinese athletes competing in those sports compared to American athletes. And then you figure out, okay, what's the math here? So until I do that, it's going to be kind of hard to say. But I feel pretty confident that both the men's and women's basketball teams are going to take care of business. I believe that we're going to probably, I don't know what's left in track and field. There's a chance that we could pick up a couple of strong medals in the relays, not, like the 4x400 meter relay for both the men and the women. And boxing is probably going to be our best. And I don't know if there's any wrestling matches left on the gold medal level, but we've already won 2 golds there. So if there's any other, typically the U.S. tends to feel a fairly strong team in freestyle wrestling, that is, and so there's some opportunities. 5's not a big number to overcome, but it all depends on how many Chinese athletes are left in competition. I know we're going to pick up. I feel very confident we're going to pick up 2 right away in basketball, so that'll close the gap to 3.
So hopefully the gap will get closed, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. This your point about wrestling, we have gotten 7 medals in wrestling, 3 golds, 1 silver, and 3 bronze so far. And you were right, China's not doing all that well in wrestling. Japan's doing well because they've got 3 golds, 1 silver, and 1 bronze for 5. And definitely the Russian Olympic Committee is also doing well, as they actually skipped a medal because they don't have any in silver, but they have 3 golds and 3 bronzes. So they've got actually 6 total medals, but they have no silver. So that's, I guess, why they're in second place and everything. But they are doing well. And then Cuba has got 2 golds and nothing else in the other category. So it does look like there hopefully is some more events going on in wrestling. And maybe that's where we can pick up some other things in that sport and everything along those lines. Because if there's a little bit more going on, then maybe we've got a shot at getting some more goals and all of that. So we'll have to see if there's any more left for us to collect out of the wrestling. But it does seem like we did well in that sport. So on that note, I hope you can make it back, Carla. And I'm going to see if Fran can make it back as well. I know that she told me originally that she can only give me 10 minutes, and actually she gave me about 20 or 25. So that was a great job for us to have her for that long. And definitely Steve, who is here with me and Addie here in North Carolina, oftentimes will try to pop in as well. So it's always glad when he's able to come on and share a little bit about his thoughts also. So Carl, as you are our guest, and I don't know if you've got any other commitments for Saturday and Sunday, but if you don't, we'd love to have you back on tomorrow and Sunday as we continue to talk about the Olympics. But if you've got any final thoughts as well as Addie, I'd love to hear those. And then after those final thoughts, I'm going to ask Mr. Wynn to give us the plane on out of here. But I'd love to hear any final thoughts that you may have, Carl, just about the Olympics, or if you have any final thoughts about life in general.
Right. Well, thanks very much, Mark. I think that, certainly tomorrow and Sunday, those are actually pretty good time frames for me because 2 o'clock Eastern is 11 o'clock. And on Saturdays, I'm pretty low key in the morning. So I'd be happy to jump on and, I'll, be obviously watching the events tonight, and the same goes for Sunday. So, my closing thoughts as far as the Olympics goes, I just want all the athletes to do well. I think the one thing you have seen is that somehow we've as a team, we've managed to demonstrate the most depth across the board by that strong overall medal count. So that tells you that sports in the United States is still going strong. I think that certainly there's some little gaps here and there, but those have been filled by other sports where historically they've not done quite as well. So the nice thing would be is when you ride that wave, and then when the other ones come back, then we come back as an even stronger team. So looking forward to seeing that in the years to come.
Sounds great. Addie, any final thoughts that you want to share with folks as we get ready to head out? And then I know that you'll probably be here, hopefully, if the team isn't in the middle of a deep practice on tomorrow and Sunday. But I'm definitely always glad to see you here with us and everything. So any thoughts that you've got for Friday? And definitely, can we expect to see you on Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, of course you expect to see me. Those are the only 2 days where I do not have practice. So that is the day I'm not busy. But also, I just read that Bruce Springsteen's daughter reaches the Olympic equestrian final. So that's cool. Good luck to her. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what tomorrow brings, and sad that the Olympics are coming to a close.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Sad that they're coming to a close. It's great that they come every 4 years, and we get to have this lovely time watching these international competitors on a regular basis. I wish that some of the international sports, and I know that Nick, who is one of the founders of this network, has brought this up, that some of these international sports would get more love during the non-Olympic years. But definitely it's great seeing them have this kind of love during the Olympic years. And it also teaches people about sports that they may not be familiar with. And hopefully they will gather new fans and new people that might join their fan base. But definitely that's one of the things that can happen during the Olympics is you find the new sports that you may not have known about and you become fans of them, and hopefully you follow them even during the non-Olympic years as well. So on that note, I'm going to ask Wynn to get us that plane on out of here. I actually don't have as much to do as I sometimes do because I don't have any other programs here on the network, except for I may do something with my friend Eric Kelly as he talked about Black business and all of that. But other than that, it's a quiet afternoon. And then tomorrow and Sunday, I will be joining y'all not from my home studio, but from a studio at a cultural arts center that I work at, because they've got some events going on this weekend. So me and my equipment will have to transport over there to the HI Center on both Saturday and Sunday. I will still be here and still be able to have our communications and still lead the discussion and all of that. So on that note, Wynn, get us on out of here with that plane on over to Tokyo.